Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 2nd of 2018 Muscatine City Council meeting. Cinda, will you please do the roll call?
Councilmember Spread, Harvey,
Aye. Or
Brockert.
here.
Present.
Saucedo,
Present.
Brackett,
Present.
Fitzgerald,
Present.
Malcolm.
Present.
6 present, 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, Cinda. Will you please join me in saying the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. We're going to go ahead and move right on to the agenda. Is there anybody here tonight that would like to speak to council about something that's not already on tonight's agenda? Hearing no one, we'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda, which includes items 6A, items 8A through G, items 12A through D, and tonight's bills totaling $2,181,766.44.
So moved, Your Honor.
Second? Second. We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilwoman Brockert. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries with all ayes. We do have one public hearing tonight, and that concerns a resolution for vacation of public utility easements in Sunrise and University Development subdivisions. Continuation of these easement is no longer of any benefit to the city of Muscatine. Now is the time for the public to comment. Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to close this public hearing?
Move to close.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Saucedo with a second by Councilman Brackett. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries with all ayes. We're on 11A tonight on the agenda, and we have presented for City Council's consideration a resolution vacating the public utility easements. University Storage LLC has submitted an easement vacation request for the purpose of building additional storage units. Continuation of these utility easements is of no benefit to the city of Muscatine. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Harvey with a second by Councilwoman Brockert. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Councilman Saucedo, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
Councilman Malcolm?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
And Councilman Brackett.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. 11B. Presented for City Council's consideration is a resolution awarding the contract for the Asphalt Alley Overlay Program. 5 bids were received for the 2018 Asphalt Overlay Program on July 27th of 2018, with the lowest responsible bidder being Taylor Ridge Paving and Construction. Staff recommends awarding the contract to Taylor Ridge Paving and Construction. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilwoman Brockert. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Councilman Brackett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
Councilman Saucedo?
Aye.
Councilman Malcolm?
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. 11C. Presented for City Council's consideration is a resolution setting a public hearing for August 16th of 2018 concerning a resolution to approve the plans and bid specifications for the airport hangar apron area. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Brockert with a second by Councilman Harvey. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Councilman Malcolm, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Councilman Brackett?
Aye.
Councilman Harvey?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
And Councilman Saucedo.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. We're on 11D. Presented for City Council's consideration is a resolution setting a public hearing for August 16th of 2018. This public hearing is regarding a resolution to approve the plans and bid specifications for airport hangar building construction. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution as submitted?
So
So
moved, Your
moved.
Honor.
Second, Councilwoman
Second.
Brockert?
Yes, please.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilwoman Brockert. Is there any discussion?
Just one question.
Okay.
The hangars that we have in Resolution C versus Resolution B. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Resolution C and D. Are we removing any of the existing hangars that are there? Or are these just all additions to the existing, to the new?
These would be new hangars.
So none of them are gonna be retrofitted, remodeled? We're just gonna continue with the old as well, too?
Not at this time, but we do have it on our long-term plans to replace one of the hangar rows with new T hangars.
But none of these in these documents are just, these are all just for expansion?
These are brand new, yeah.
Okay.
And just to remind council, two would be paid for and be land leases. One would be a partial payment and then a lease payment in a few years down the road. And then the fourth is just a standard lease. And we're working on draft lease agreements, so those will be in place before the contract is awarded. Payment would be due up front.
Okay.
And that's for these new ones that you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
there's,
the three private investors, is
Yeah,
that what
that-
you're referring to?
that's right. There's 4 hangars.
Right, three are the investors.
3 investors. 2 of those 3 are actually doing a full boat on paying for the structure. The third one's paying a sizable amount of money. We're gonna use that money also to help with some of the utility connections. But primarily, he's going to have a lease and a ground lease. And then the fourth one's a free, I should say. It's paid for
DOT.
by the city, by the state.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be able to lease that one right out. So this will be a net positive revenue for the airport, and no taxpayer money is expected, except for the apron.
So the private investors, just help me understand a little bit. So they are paying to have their hangar built, their part,
Correct.
and then they're also going to pay us to lease it?
They're going to pay us a ground lease, where the structure sits on.
Okay, so they're actually gonna own the hangar?
They will for the first initial phase of the initial term of the lease for, we're gonna give them, I think it's a 20-year, 30-year lease.
Same thing we do for all
They
the
would have a-
corporates down there.
Yeah, and it converts over to the city ownership, just like the other ones, like GPC.
At
And
our
So like
last
for
discu-
paying
At our
to-
last discussion, it would revert to the city immediately and then be a long-term land lease, for the term of the agreement.
So basically, for them paying to have the hangar built, they're gonna get a credit to use it for X amount of years?
yes, and that 30 years, I think, is the number.
35 and 5 was the last discussion.
So that meets the FAA's requirements of staying under their window, and it meets our revenue, long-term revenue streams.
Gotcha.
All right.
Other questions? Councilman Harvey?
Specifically, I guess in this case, hangar 4, is that like a one-plane hangar, or can they put 2 in there, kind of,
It's 50 by 50. Each hangar will
probably
be.
it's 2 private planes?
Oh, yeah, you can fit 2 smaller ones in there. I should say regular-sized aircraft.
Councilman Malcolm, did you have a
Well,
question?
that was one of my questions. The other question is, I just had a senior moment. So basically, from the sizing here, basically this is about 2 football fields?
It'd be 200 by 50, so not
Feet.
quite.
Feet, okay.
200
okay.
feet.
Feet.
Okay. All right, I'm with you. And basically the whole 2 small aircraft. We're not talking about
Each
7.
one, yeah, each one could probably hold up probably a couple of small aircraft, or one larger one, like a jet or something like that, too.
who handles the administration of the hangars? Do the people that are putting up this investment, or does the airport
We will be, Community Development Department and Greg.
and the airport? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
You're talking about maintenance?
No, just, overall administration, because,
Oh.
you gotta log in, log out, and schedule taxiways and all that stuff.
Well, we hire Carver Aero
Carver.
to operate the airport.
Okay.
They are a fixed-based operator.
Still, we provide the security and like that through them,
Okay,
but they report to us.
okay.
Similar to cities done in the past, we have several hangars that were land leased, corporate hangars that were turned over to the city, and they received a long-term land lease. So,
I don't hear any other questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Harvey, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
Councilman Saucedo?
Aye.
Councilman Malcolm?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
And Councilman Brackett?
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. We're on 11E. Presented for City Council's consideration tonight is a resolution approving the contract and bond to Needham Excavating for the Hauser Street Parking Expansion and Athletic Field Grading Project. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilwoman Brockert. Is there any discussion?
I have a question. On page 2, in the comments, is this contract to Needham or High Brand?
Good question.
Because it says, the council has awarded this contract to Hauser Parking Expansion and Athletic Grading to the High Brand Industrial dated on July 20th to the amount of $641,000.
It's to Needham. That's a typo. Sorry about that.
Okay, well, make sure you don't sign that one.
Linda, that's on you. Don't put it on my
It's
desk.
to Needham.
Okay,
It's to
I
Needham.
want to make sure I'm reading through that and we don't want to,
Yep. We were just testing you there a little.
okay,
Good job.
good.
And we read those all over. Slipped one by us. Good catch.
That's all I have.
Hearing nothing else, Councilman Harvey, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilwoman Brockert?
Aye.
Councilman Saucedo?
Aye.
Councilman Brackett?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Aye.
And Councilman Malcolm?
Aye.
The resolution is adopted with all ayes. We're on 11EF. Presented for City Council's consideration is a request approving an all-way stop at the intersection of 3rd Street and Cherry. This intersection has been temporarily set as an all-way stop due to construction and detours with no complaints. The Traffic Committee requests that this intersection become a permanent all-way stop for the improvement of traffic flow and safety. Is there a motion to adopt or to approve this request as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Brockert with a second by Councilman Brackett. Is there any discussion?
Just one question to either Brian or to Jim. Did we ever get a confirmation on the ability to be able to get the flashing stop signs? I know that we had a discussion about that, but I go to other communities, I see this, and I don't see that being a DOT-driven thing that they're removing these. And I know that we had requested that, and that's something that I'm asking if we can still pursue. Particularly in not well-lit areas.
That whole thing was not for drama or effect. Walking across there, my foot fell asleep.
Nope, that's fine. That's fine.
Apologies. Okay, so could I talk you into repeating that question?
So what we're trying to do is, a couple of months back, we had requested on moving the blinking stop signs over by the old Wareco. I think it's
Circle K.
Circle K now. Sorry. And I think we've had great success in that. I knew
Yes.
that we had seen them initially on Mulberry.
Right.
We had had good feedback from the public in that, and so we had requested in the future to start budgeting to looking at saying, can we pursue this and maybe buying some,
Flashing.
solar-powered flashing stop signs.
Stop signs.
In non-well-lit areas for people to not just run through stop signs and help keep attention on that. And the DOT is what somebody had came up and said, Brian had said, well, the DOT is reevaluating this, there's not a confirmation that we can do this. I'm asking, I've seen it in other cities, And I'm still wanting to know, can we pursue that? Or are we just gonna not pursue it at all and continue with what we got?
Do you mind if I take 5 seconds and just review how I think we're doing that? Just so we're all on the same page, and then we can start from there.
Yeah, sure.
We bought several of those stop signs.
How many
And,
several?
I think there's just 2, if I remember right. Phil, how many did we put up on Mulberry and Hauser? Was it 2 or was it 3? I think it was just.
There's 3.
Okay,
No,
wait.
there were just
there's
2
3.
on Mulberry.
No, is it? Okay. Hey, 2 or 3. We go on.
Fine, that's fine.
Okay.
What was discussed was if we put in new stop signs where there weren't stop signs before, that we would put those in and we would let them go until we were sure everybody was aware that those were there. And then we would move them, use them again. So if we got a new place we're gonna put up stop signs, we would use that same equipment and put it up there to draw attention, hey, this is a new stop sign. And so our intent was to, the ones at the corner of 8th and Cypress have been up for a while, and our intent was to take one of those and move it up to 3rd and Cherry. So that was our intent. Now, back to your question. Can we do that? Yes, we can. Just to be the devil's advocate and give you the other side of that, 3rd and Cherry is strictly residential. I'm not real sure how people are going to appreciate that light flashing, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So there's always other sides to this. But maybe we could ask Phil how he liked the flashing of the red light. And
He said they didn't bother him. You
Yeah.
couldn't really
I
see
seem
them
to
unless they
remember
were
that.
head on.
Unless you're coming right on it,
Yeah.
but my house is situated, and it's not parallel to Mulberry.
Can we,
So that's the long answer. The
Yeah.
short answer is yes, we can look at it, but I want to make sure that, as a council, every stop sign we put in.
no, what I'm trying to get at is the areas that are not well lit, the areas that we have probably more accidents at, maybe this is something that I don't think we should have to make the decision, maybe the traffic committee can look at this.
Right.
But all I'm asking is that I knew we requested it a while back, and we got back with,
Right.
well, the DOT is looking at this, we don't know if we're gonna buy any at all, and we had already budgeted for some.
Right.
And all I'm asking is, can we review that again, go back and find out where we at on that? I'm not saying that we need to do every stop sign, that's the
Yep.
furthest thing that I'm asking
Yep.
for. I'm just saying,
Okay.
the areas that we've had, what was it, Cypress and what was that road?
3rd.
No.
Cypress,
No, Cypress.
Cherry
Cypress
and
eighth.
3rd
Yeah,
and
that's where I
Cypress
got,
and 8th.
I particularly had an accident
Yeah.
there. So I know that was one that I thought was definitely an area. Not my fault,
Okay.
but.
Even shorter answer, yes, we will look at it again.
Okay.
Traffic committee.
Jim, I
how
had-
mu-
oh, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. How much does one of these units cost as opposed to a regular old stop sign?
Can I just give it to you in round figures? Best
Sure.
guess, I don't know exactly. A regular old stop sign that you would put up is $100, maybe less.
Okay,
Those lighted ones are, I want to say like $750, $800, something like that. Now, give me permission to be wrong about that, but I think that is close to the
I
comparison.
thought they were a lot more than that.
Yeah, I started to think about 1,100,
does
and
an
I thought,
accident
no, I don't
cost?
think that's quite right, but they're somewhere in the range of that. 7 to 10 times more expensive than just a regular stop sign. But obviously, there's a place for them, and I think that is Santos' point. Maybe we need to do some thinking about where we would use them and recommend them and where we wouldn't. So we can take that up with the traffic committee,
Just,
maybe even.
yeah, that's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
They can look at it.
Jim, I have some questions
you.
about this particular intersection.
Okay.
So has this been an intersection that's been a problem? Have there been accidents there? I guess I didn't realize that was a bad intersection.
Let's see, define it by bad intersection. Are there a lot of accidents there? I'm not sure that we can define it as a bad intersection because there's a lot of accidents there. The ones that I get the complaints on are the non-standard ones. So when I started as a city engineer, I got complaints about 8th and Cypress. It's people that are new to town or, you know, don't travel that way a lot. The question is always, why isn't that a four-way stop? That's very confusing, that one way gets to go. It's the same complaint that I have gotten numerous times about 3rd and Cherry.
So people
So-
have complained about that
Yes,
intersection?
but I mean, it's,
Okay.
if you were to ask me, I would say in the 3 years I've been city engineer, maybe 20 people have made a point to complain about it because it's confusing to newer people. And some of them are those wonderful complaints. My aunt was in from out of town and almost got hit, but, you know, nobody really got hit, so
Okay.
who knows?
I used to use it every day, and I think this is great, because the number of times that I had near accidents there, or saw near accidents there, was not small, because it is a 3-way stop on a 4-way intersection, and it's bizarre, so and this has had a temporary 4-way for quite some time now, correct?
Yes.
Perfect, so, and you weren't, Santos, you weren't asking for this to get the blinker
No.
lights,
No,
right?
it was just, mine was
Okay.
just
I
in
mean,
general.
we'll look at that to see if
If
that.
you want.
If
that's
it's
what
just, if it's been this way for quite some
Yeah.
time, I just, you know, I didn't see any reason. for
I just didn't, I
there,
was
but-
reading all the supporting documents and didn't see an explanation of why.
Yeah.
And I have never gotten a complaint on that corner.
And if we have an intersection that is dark, maybe Power and Water needs to look at putting a light fixture out there.
Yeah, putting a light out there.
It wouldn't hurt either.
Yep, that would
True,
be
true.
nice.
I have complained about this intersection very quietly under my breath multiple times, so I might not have referred
Not
that
to me.
complaint to anybody, but I've said it to myself while in
Very
the
good.
car, so.
Thank you, Jim.
Anything else, Mayor? Council, thank you.
Hearing nothing else, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. We're on 11G, and presented for City Council's consideration is a request to authorize the issuance of a purchase order to Aeroclave in the amount of $15,598 for the purchase of an RDS 3110 decontamination system. There's $15,600 budgeted for this expense. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Harvey. Any discussion?
Curiosity question. It says it can be used to sterilize offices. I was just wondering whether how often the chief's office needs to be sterilized.
So, I have an
Don't
actual,
even waste your time, Jerry.
I have an actual real question.
Okay, come back.
So this is obviously a fogging machine that helps decontaminate, you know, the ambulances and sterilize the things. What are we using currently now then?
Manual spray bottles. Yeah, so this is going to be able to get areas that we can't get to with a
Can't get
spray
to now.
bottle and hand wiping. The good thing about this also is that you put the machine in there and close the doors and you can go off and do something else as opposed to manually clean it. So it's going to save a lot of man hours. It's going to clean it better. They've done some studies down in Florida where actually in the winter months it's reduced sick leave to employees just because the ambulance is cleaner. We're transporting a lot of sick people, a lot of airborne contaminants, and again, it's going to be good for the paramedics, but it's also going to be clean and good for the patients, the sick patients that we transport. And I will point out that we are $2 under budget on this purchase.
I saw
also.
that. We did talk about this at the budget meeting.
I
I remember
remember,
you
I just, it
talking
was more
about it.
around just wondering what we were using in the
Yeah.
past, so I appreciate it, thank you.
Councilman Harvey has a
I do have a
question.
legitimate question.
Okay.
Is the fog hazardous to your health? You know, if somebody should happen to walk into a room with that, is it?
I really haven't read the literature on it. I just know what they recommend, and the company's going to come and give us training on it, so we'll know how to operate it properly. I know there's two different ways. We got the detachable wand for it too, so you can actually, you know, take the wand off and set it inside, and it does the spray and mist that way for like 6 minutes, and then you let it sit for 10 or so. So under 20 minutes, the thing is clean where you can get in it. But it also has the capability of the wand, so like the portable equipment, that's like we take out of the compartments, we can decontaminate that with the portable wand, but I don't think you need a filter or anything on it if you're out in the air. But again, the company's gonna come and show us how to operate it so we do it safely, so it'll be okay.
Would the box and the cab have to be done separately, or is there communication between them?
No, they're open. There's a door open inside there, so yeah.
I've been in one, and at that time, I wasn't.
Yeah. Normally you're
Attention.
looking up, normally
Yeah,
you're just looking at the
up.
ceiling.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jerry.
Okay.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. 11H, presented for City Council's consideration is a request approving a contract with Spark Consulting to fulfill the grant agreement with Iowa Historic Resource Development Commission and prepare the Fair Oaks Historic District for nomination into the National Registry of Historic Places. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilwoman Brockert. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. 11I, presented for City Council's consideration is a request approving a memorandum of understanding for the Department of Justice, Justice Assistant Grant, the JAG grant. This grant awards $17,406 to be divided between the Muscatine Police Department and the Muscatine Sheriff Department. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Saucedo with a second by Councilwoman Brockert. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. 11J, presented for City Council's consideration is a request to authorize the issuance of a purchase order to Waltz Scale Company in the amount of $71,419.20. 5 bids were received for the scale, and Waltz Scale Company had the lowest responsible bid. This expense will be paid out of the fiscal year 19 transfer station capital budget. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Harvey. Is there any discussion?
Just a question on their options between 4 and 5.
Mr. Pop. How are you? Good.
So option 5, they gave us an option for a scale with a steel deck on it. That was not requested as a bid option. And during the bid process, they asked if we would consider looking at that. I said we would consider making that an addendum if they could give me some references as to where these steel deck scales have been installed so that we could contact them, and they could not provide that. So for our application, the concrete deck is a more feasible option to have.
So the concrete deck is gonna be flush, so when the, community, people that go through trash are gonna be able to drive right into it, and it's not gonna feel like there's an up or a down or anything.
Correct,
like
it will
that.
be just as it is currently.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
that's all I have, thank you.
Hearing nothing else, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. 11K, presented for City Council's consideration is a request approving an agreement with NLC Service Line Warranty Program. This program would offer extended coverage for water and sewer lines, as well as indoor plumbing at a minimal cost to local homeowners. A presentation on this program was shown at the June 14th of 2018 in-depth City Council meeting. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second? Anyone?
I'll second it to get,
I wanna discuss a little bit about this.
Me too.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Fitzgerald. Discussion time.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Councilwoman Brockert.
Exhibit A, the very first page of this, and for folks at home, this is item 2, license conditions. Item A, city and utility logo on letterhead, advertising, billing, and marketing materials. B, signature by city and utility official. In my humble opinion, and those of folks I have spoken with, this is not how we want the city logo to be used. And I think we'd be setting a dangerous precedent if we were to allow this to happen.
You mean it would be us like vouching for this program?
It would appear that we are vouching for the program, and what's to prevent us from being approached by somebody else in the future, and they come back and say, well, you did this for so-and-so, why won't you do this for us?
Councilman Harvey?
Well, I just have a problem in general that although it's a voluntary, if you do all 3 items, it's $23 a month, which is not insignificant to a lot of people, and that's $276 a year, and I just don't, like I said, although it's voluntary, I just don't think that we ought to be promoting somebody's spending that much money that may think they need it because they've been sold on it, and it's a lot of money out of their pocket. I don't think we ought to be promoting insurance, this type of insurance, or any other insurance for this, as far as that goes. It's the principle of the matter.
I understand. What I heard her saying was that this is a service that a lot of folks want, and many homeowners insurance policies don't offer this coverage. And
Most of
so
them
it
don't.
would be something that people could get if they chose to. But I understand what you're saying, Nadine.
I guess I would beg to differ on her statement that a lot of people want this, because if you look at the list of Iowa cities that took advantage of this, if you will, or disadvantage of it, none of the big cities are on that. It's little cities. I think Muscatine is probably the most populous city would ever be on that list.
Well, no, they had other cities like Marshalltown and some other ones that were same population. It's more around, in my perspective is, you're buying an insurance that you would potentially have if your home was really old. And for me, more around the septic and things like that. My hang up is I don't want our name written on something to that effect, because it's like basically a bumper-to-bumper insurance, and you're buying an extra coverage, and you'd have the right to be able to say no. I just don't feel that it's something that the city should be endorsing. I don't have a problem with it. If the MPWs are great with it and the other groups are great with it, that's fine. I don't need to have my endorsement from our city representing, saying that, hey, yeah, we think this is a great program, because I don't know if it is. And if somebody really wants to buy an extra insurance, let them buy it on their own. If this group can do that, that's fine, but I don't think it's something that we need to be endorsing as a community or as a city, saying this is a great program, because we've never had it. We've seen some cities that have had it, and we're seeing that. I feel like it's opening the door to potentially have people that don't understand really what costs are, like you're saying, $276. Well, start putting that times 10,000 people. This is an income maker for them, not, to me, a added value to the
Or be
homeowner.
misleading and have it.
And I'm not saying that's, you're gonna have, if somebody does have a septic break, and it's from their house to the MPW. It's in the city's, advantage if they had something like that, but how do you know that? It is an extra insurance. I just don't feel that we need to be endorsing that. If it's out there, let them sell it.
Okay.
Let them do that, but not with my endorsement.
My question here is, can people purchase this without the city as a body endorsing it? I mean, can, Mr. Smith off the street call his company and says, I want to buy this service? If we don't endorse it or not, can he subscribe and take out the policy himself without?
Just contact this company on their own?
Yes.
Oh, that's a good question.
And that was my question too. I think this program happens locally as it becomes available because of MPW's endorsement, right? Whether we vote for it or not,
It'll still proceed.
right. So we can,
And that's what
we
I'm
can, we can refuse to put our endorsement on it, and it'll still be available to residents of Muscatine. So those that choose could do so.
2 things I would qualify. I endorsement, promote, legitimate, I guess, making sure that people understand that it's maybe legitimate. It's promoted by the National League of Cities and the Iowa League of Cities, so they have entered into and reviewed the program. So I guess one, to me, by putting your logo on it, you're making sure that folks know that it's legitimate. It's like, kind of like the issue we've had with people coming to doors here recently without permits from the city. This lets them know that it's a legitimate company, and then,
Well, I mean, they have
secondly,
their Better Business Bureau tag on, that, I mean, so I mean, they're.
Well,
that's
So
enough
people
of
do
a-
always worry if that, is that a hoax or
and then
something like that.
Kim-
secondly, once you do get into the street, your costs go up exponentially, and that can happen in numerous cases, and this provides that kind of coverage. So, and pro or con, I wanted to get it back on for council consideration to whether or not you wanted to move forward. It's my understanding Muscatine Power and Water is not taking revenue; they're reducing the fee that would be charged to the customer.
Say that again, what?
As part of
MPW
this
is what?
program, the municipality or the entity can choose to receive revenue from the project, or they can, or the fee to the customer can be reduced. And it's my understanding MPW has chosen to reduce the fee to the customer rather than taking any revenue off of the program.
So I have another question then. So if we approved this and it's in place, you're saying that this could be a potential revenue stream for us if we tagged on?
You would have to choose, and it's a joint agreement, so I think we'd probably want to be on the same page, but it could be a revenue source, or you could reduce the customer's rate.
Couldn't we,
Well, that
just
changes it.
allow them to get a business license to do business in the city without us endorsing them at all?
We don't have business licensing. I mean, I can certainly ask them that question, but they typically look for the.
Why don't we have a business?
Been in the
To
endorsement.
sell beer and everything else, retail?
Those are state-approved licenses.
Oh, okay, okay.
Well, and they'll be able to offer this program whether we approve it or not. It's just whether or not we endorse it with our logo or not, essentially.
Oh,
So that, because they're gonna be able to sell it through MPW, because MPW is choosing to support it.
I do know somebody this week who noticed that there were a couple of houses in their neighborhood that were having to get the work done from the street to their house. And so they called their insurance company, White Pigeon in Wilton, and said, I want to add on something on my insurance in case that ever happens to me. I don't want to have a $15,000 debt. And they said, we don't provide that insurance. So I know that there is a need, at least for that one person that I was speaking with this week.
But you never know whether you're gonna need it, depending on the house.
No.
Depending on where the house is located and the type of sewer system that was installed.
Those old tile ones,
And, I mean, you could,
they're not that old houses.
but I'm not one that, I don't really go for service agreements. That's something that I don't normally buy. And that's basically what this is. And if you know, if you're gonna own a home, you better be able to afford the repairs to that home, so.
We just have a rider on our homeowner's insurance for it. But they all don't offer that, I guess.
Don't know.
You know,
So, any other
I
discussion?
was just gonna say that, you know, we all drive around town, you can see people doing sewer work in the streets and stuff like that, but if you consider how many of those you see compared to how many there are sewer lines in Muscatine, pretty low percentage. And to me, this just seems like it's gonna be a big moneymaker for that company. They're getting
Oh, they wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't.
$276. Well, yeah, and I don't think we ought to be promoting it by putting our name on it.
Well, and I feel that, you know, people will be able to purchase this
If it's still
anyway,
going
so I
forward.
don't see a reason that we need to endorse that, and MPW has already decided they're not going to charge anything additional, so I don't feel that we need to tack onto it, because I don't want that to be an option in the future,
yep, I agree.
so.
So then, hearing no other discussion, all in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
The motion is, does not carry with all nays. We are on 11M. No, we're not. We're on 11L. Presented for City Council's consideration is a request approving supplement number 4 for the high-strength waste project. This supplement will allow for additional geotechnical sampling to be done at the new site location. Testing will be done by Terracon for $9,873. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Brackett with a second by Councilman Fitzgerald. Any discussion?
Do we feel there's gonna be any other supplementals on top of this one?
Get yourself penned in there, John.
Any other supplementals throughout the course of the rest of the project?
With this one, because we had the boring that we had had before, correct?
Well, we did it, yeah, we moved the site.
Okay.
We moved locations of the facility because it's expanded. It's getting bigger, basically. But the cost is kind of going down. But no, I don't expect another supplemental for more geotechnical, but I can't say that it won't happen for anything else.
No, I understand, but more for this aspect is what I was asking.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. 11, now we're on
M.
11M. We did 11L quick. Present for City Council's consideration is a request approving a professional services agreement with Watersmith Engineering in the amount of $6,350 for Phase 1 Slough Wetlands and Drainage Improvement Study. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Brockert with a second by Councilman Harvey. Any discussion?
Yes, Your Honor. Is there anybody here that could walk us through this? There's a description, but I'm trying to visualize it, what the problem is and what this is going to solve.
Sure. Right where the new trailhead is, that goes back into the Pollinator Park, crosses Hauser Street, comes out of Kentstein, crosses Hauser Street. Right there, the slough lift station pumps water from the slough under the street into the slough that goes down into Louisa County. Well, there's also a lot of drainage in that area, takes sand and dirt and all that other kind of stuff. Well, it's made this big mound, so that just fills up like a giant bowl of water. And there's a culvert that goes back the other direction and fills up this little bowl down on the other side of the street. I don't know if you've driven by there or not, but it's a lot of big dead grass right in the middle of this thing, and it fills up every time that it rains like that. So, yeah, on the east side, right? Yeah, where it's grass mowed and looks nice, and now it's full of water and it's junky. So what's happening is, you know, the water is not flowing through there anymore because it's built up through debris. So we're gonna go in and clean it out so that the debris so that the water can actually flow as opposed to just pooling up in that one spot. One of the things that we're going to do is we're going to take the water that we're pumping from the Hauser, or from the slough pump station, send it to a couple of wetlands that are on site in the new Pollinator Park, and that'll help those wetlands that are not wet all the time, which they should be. A lot of them should be wetter than they are anyway. Hopefully reducing some of the water that we send down the slough, give a nice little bump to the ecosystem in that area. That's supposed to be a nice wetland restoration project that we're going to have. So it should do a number of different things that'll be beneficial to the whole area right there. So
Would this study, I would hope this study would say that if the wetlands can't take 100% of that flow, that we'd still have the option to take the excess to the...
Oh, it's not going to take 100% of the flow. No, I'm not sending all the water there. What we're basically going to do is we're just going to take a portion of that flow around a pipe up to the drainage area over there, and we'll have a valve on the end of it so we can turn it off and on as we need to. So when the wetland's full or when we don't need any more water to that wetland, we just turn the valve off.
Like
in the middle of the winter, we're not going to, it'll probably won't go that direction either. So
kind of like to control the Lake Odessa area, right?
Yeah, maybe so.
Open and shut the dick.
Yeah, so we're going to have direct control over it. And that's what the study's going to tell us, is just how much water that area really needs.
If you had to guess, how many acres of wetlands are we talking about?
Oh, like 3 or 4.
Okay. Between the two of them, you
Yeah.
said there's 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Hearing nothing else, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. 11N, presented for City Council's consideration is a request authorizing the issuance of a purchase order to BMW Builders for the Tanglefoot sidewalk construction. 2 bids were received for this project, and BMW Builders had the lowest responsible bid. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Saucedo with a second by Councilman Brackett. Any discussion?
I have a question, Your Honor, for
Go ahead.
Jim. I'll let him walk up to the podium.
He can't listen and walk, he's proved that. Well, he did that on you.
The question I have, Jim, is it appears the 2 bids were within $2,000 of each other, but our estimate was $26,900. Why was there such a difference between what we estimated versus what it's actually going to cost us?
Mayor, council, I was hoping that question was anything but that.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. To estimate that, I took unit prices out of previous contracts for removal, 8-inch PCC concrete, et cetera, sidewalk, and you estimate those quantities, you multiply those quantities times those unit prices, and you come up with an estimate. You don't give a lot of consideration to maybe that's a small project, so maybe profit would be a slightly larger percentage of the total than it would be. There's a lot of variables that go along with that, and all I can say is that's what we thought it was going to cost. Santos knows very well because it's his job, and sometimes your estimates just don't hit the mark. But I think it has a lot to do with how good the economy is right now and how busy everybody is.
Yeah, they probably bid it high just because they're not looking for the work.
That's true.
Secondly, they're gonna have mobilization costs they're gonna have to start setting in place.
Yep.
And when you start putting all that in, they're gonna have to say, okay, if we really want that job, you're gonna have to pay us. And,
Okay.
And,
Okay.
yeah, that's.
So it's not necessarily the price of concrete's gone up or the price of removing a big tree is gone up.
The price of labor has gone up, we know that.
That's true.
Recently, but there are also some things that I didn't include in my estimate, like removing the sidewalk on the other side of Hauser.
Okay.
So
All right, thank you.
I believe those to be good prices.
Okay.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have put them in front of you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jim, are they going to have it done before school?
No,
Just thought I'd
even though that was a goal, and I understood the request, but I mean,
When the snow
if
flies
we
off.
just,
About 3 weeks. Hurry up.
Thank you, Jim.
thank you.
Yeah.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. 11O, presented for City Council's consideration is a request approving the submission of a grant application for a REAP grant for the West Side Trailhead project. This grant would provide funding for a restroom and other amenities for the southern end of the Hauser Street parking lot expansion and athletic field grading project, and serve a dual purpose as trailhead serving 4 trails at this location. Is there a motion to approve the request as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Saucedo with a second by Councilman Brackett. Is there any discussion?
Just a comment that I really appreciate the staff's time to be able to pursue this, as obviously it's a big, big additive to our community, and hopefully we can get this. Thank you, Andrew.
$115,000.
That's all I have.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. Next, we're going to have a brief discussion on fireworks.
That is the goal.
Who's
So
leading that
are we gonna have somebody
discussion?
talk about
I
it,
don't
or
know,
are we
but
gonna
I've got
talk
some
about
I
it?
have some questions for staff on it that maybe will get us going
We have Chief Evers and Assistant Chief Hartman here, and Captain Snyder as well. So you've got a recap of 2018 and the backup materials, and as well as some numbers from 2017.
I think we've all read through all of
Yeah.
the supporting documents.
So-
Staff has, or council each has a few questions.
So my question, I know that we had some of the tents that had failed the selling them, the checks on selling to minors. And so when what happens to those tents when they fail that check?
That's a good question. What we did this year, with the assistance of, actually led by the police department, we did compliance checks where we went around and we saw if the tents would sell to individuals under the age of 18. And 4 of the 7 that we checked actually sold to the underage individuals. What happens from there is an arrest is made, and if you're a Muscatine County citizen, you can just sign, your own recognizance, all that kind of stuff. They do have to go in front of a judge and plead their case, all that kind of stuff, and then the fine is set by the judge. As far as what that does to the tent, in essence, nothing.
Okay.
The way the state law is written as far as sales, all those kind of things, even if we had a tent that had something absolutely horrible, and we said, you know what, State Fire Marshal, you need to pull the license for this, even if they agreed to that, they would pull it. However, in the law it is written that there is basically a 30-day grace period before it can actually go into effect. Well, the sales time period is less than that. So in essence, there's not really anything we can do.
Okay, so
the following year, if the same individual goes for a license from the state, then they may go ahead and deny it at that point. But if it's a family member or a friend, something like that, they can kind of get around that.
Okay, so do we have flexibility on the fine? Or that, you said that goes, that's just,
it goes in
that's
front of the
set by the
judge.
judge?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have, other than the fact that we can make an arrest, we have absolutely zero flexibility on punishment for violating the age compliance?
We're limited, yes.
Okay. Well, that pretty much answers all the rest of the questions I had on that particular section of it.
You could always transport them back to the cop shop in the canine unit without the dog in it. That would be unusual.
I guess, is there any questions on the material that we provided? I believe this is the 3rd time now that we've been in front of you with the fireworks. City staff's recommendation has been to ban it originally. We had the same consistent message last year when we revisited it. And again, sitting in front of you tonight, city staff's recommendation is to ban the discharge. But again, it's council's decision. We've provided you with all the stats, gave you the stats of what the other communities have done. I'll just kind of recap on that. For the majority of the cities in Iowa, 3 of the cities that originally allowed them to discharge after that first period last year of shooting them off, they changed their minds, and the 3 cities that banned were Cedar Rapids, Waterloo, and West Des Moines. There was 5 other communities, including Muscatine, that shortened the time period down, either the time frame or the number of days for them to discharge. So again, we're here to answer any of your questions. It really puts a strain on the fire department. It really puts a strain on the police department because they're the ones that really have to deal with the enforcement issue afterwards. I mean, Mike, the fire marshal, is dealing with it on the front end with all the retailers selling it. But really the extra work and all the stuff that has to do with people violating the discharging really is put on the police department to try to deal with. So we do know that there's a couple injuries in town. There's a lot of significant injuries across the state of Iowa due to fireworks. And we also know that a lot of them are underreported or not reported injuries. So again, we're here to answer any of your questions. Again, it's city staff's recommendation is that we would like to see the ban the discharge of fireworks.
Chief, I have to speak because I have a individual whose vehicle was destroyed apparently by fireworks. Fortunately for him, somebody in the community stepped up and gave him another replacement vehicle. But say we did ban the fireworks discharging. How do you enforce that? See, it just, I mean, we don't have enough, we would have to deputize all the fire department, hire more police, and I don't think we would still be able to keep up with that. That the volume of that is just mind-boggling all by itself.
Again, that's a good question. I may let Steve kind of answer that a little bit. I would just probably say is that it's going to reduce the number of calls that we have, but just because, and I think if you saw in your memo that Mike wrote, even if we do ban the discharge of fireworks, it doesn't mean that people still aren't going to do it. It just means that there's going to be less of it, and so it's probably going to be easier for them to deal with. But I'll let Steve kind of chime in on.
So all the years that it's been banned in Iowa, 39 years or something like some number.
Long time.
I mean,
No, that's what I commented before. So that was the thing.
they've been going off for 39 years, 40 years, whatever. I mean, I've got them down the street from me.
It's difficult to enforce. The fees are not, extremely high, and I'm more in the realm of, we've already reduced it down. You can see the numbers. Statistically, the numbers are down in the amount of calls, but we also reduced the use to 2 days. So my request to staff is, how can we help you provide enforcement? Because I don't feel that I'm not at a position to say that I want to ban them completely when I know we can't control the sale of them. And I know your position on that, Chief, but it's difficult to have an enforcement when you have a state law that allows them, and we can't even do anything if they sell them illegally. That's another frustrating piece from my perspective, but help us. Tell us, how can we help you?
5 more officers would probably do it.
Well, so let's just say hypothetically, if those 2 days, we did something to that effect. I mean, if in the end we had more potential, charges, and we had more people that we were able to fine, and then in the next year, that's probably going to be regulated more in a controlled manner. Particularly in the neighborhood where we were at, that all stopped at around 9:55. We did the recommendations from what staff had the year before and saying, hey, we don't want you guys out at 1 a.m. letting these off on the 3rd of July. And yes, was it still done? Correct, it was. But it's a balancing act. It's difficult for us to sit here and say, well, we reduced it from a week down to 2 days. And I think that the individuals out there, I don't hear any going out today. I haven't heard any more in the past couple of weeks, but I think it's a balancing act in saying, how can we provide you with better staffing if it's overtime during that couple of days to help that enforcement, so we can make sure that we can control that better to avoid the potentials that we're seeing.
Well, I think the majority of our enforcement this year came from the after-hours issues, and people firing them off outside the dates. You're right. The difference between then and now is that the sale is legal here now, where it wasn't before, so they don't have to drive down to Missouri or another state and pick up fireworks. You're going to have more in the area, and as the chief said, it's not going to eliminate the problem. It'll simply reduce the amount that we deal with it if there is a total ban. Again, that's council's decision, but we'll deal with it either way.
But to your point, would 5 more officers during that shift help?
No, that's not going to change
Okay,
anything.
well,
They're
'cause you
still
said that
going to
earlier.
fire
I mean,
them
that was
off.
on the record earlier, so I can ask Cindy to say that.
Well, and I've got, my thoughts on this are, we can't do anything about the sales. So they're gonna be lit off, whether we ban them or leave it at 2 days or extend the days, which I'm not in favor of. I'm not, for the record, I'm not in favor of the fireworks at all. I spent about $400 in vet bills this year due to the fireworks. If it was up to me, we wouldn't have any in town, period, if it was up to me alone, and I thought that law could actually be enforced, which I don't. As long as we have zero control over the sale of the fireworks, I'm inclined to leave at least a couple of days where people can do them legally, because they're gonna do them no matter what. I mean, we see that, I didn't see a difference between the 1st and the 2nd from the 3rd to the 4th, in my neighborhood, and they were going there. I still heard some this past week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had some over the weekend, thank you.
I mean, I've been continuing to hear the particularly loud mortar style ones that have, those were the ones that were the problem throughout the whole time. So for me, you know, I encourage people to reach out to their legislators at the state and ask them to make some change so that we have some flexibility and we can adjust sale dates and or close down tents that are violating the law and or do other things locally where we have more local control instead of the strong arm tactic that they've taken where they're trying to, you know, get extra tax dollars to fix budget issues. And they need to give us that flexibility back so that we can make those changes. Until then, I don't want to make any change to our current status at all. I'd like to leave at least 2 days for people to legally do them so that they can get it out of their system, and hopefully they will stick to those 2 days and not do it for the 6 weeks that they're allowed to be sold. That's my stance on it.
Not necessarily. I'm gonna ask a direct question to the professionals. Let me make sure I understood you. Your recommendation professionally would be totally banned.
If you want to reduce the number of the calls that we're dealing with at this point, yes, and that's, I think,
Okay.
the recommendation
Chief,
overall.
I'm talking to my favorite people. I don't normally talk to the police officer. I like to fire people. So, you know this. So Chief, your recommendation saying?
Yeah, and again, our message has been consistent
Okay.
for the last 3 times that we've been talking to you. So again, you guys have to make that decision. You're the ones that are really getting the complaints. We're getting a few of them. We go out when we're called to go out, but I mean, you're the ones that are fielding all the complaints. They're talking to people in the public, so you have to make that decision. Again, I want to be clear that staff's recommendation from day one last year after we revisited it, and you remember a couple months ago, you asked us to come talk to you about fireworks and stuff like that. So again, our message has been the same the entire time, is that we believe that it would be easier and better and safer for everybody if we just ban discharge in the city.
And we've had charges, state charges for various things, and we've changed them to city charges. That way we get the money for it.
Yeah.
Are there additional city charges that we could come up with a fee structure that?
Well, and that would be another option, and I'm not really sure what kind of wiggle room council would have with that. But if it became a civil penalty under city, and you set a maximum fine of however high you can go, you know, that's the deterrent effect of,
right,
I'm getting hit with a $300 fine for shooting off fireworks, I'm not gonna do that
A
anymore.
sale or shoot
No,
or
no,
discharge?
For shooting
For
them
the
off.
discharge.
We can't
control the sale.
Yeah,
Right.
no, but we
But the
talked about that. We
discharge-
talked about
Yeah.
that, saying, could we pursue the potential of fine, especially right now, what they have the first time fee, and then if they were to be,
Right.
you know,
And I
charged again.
haven't looked at that recently, I don't know
No.
what that structure is right off the top of my head. But, you know, if there's some wiggle room there to play with that and maybe increase penalties, you might further see a reduction in
I
the
thought
activity.
we had bagged away from that because then we might have to incur legal fees on their defense for them, and some other stuff came up with it.
If you remember, Chief Talkington last go-around was talking about the difficulty of the way that it's written, is that you actually have to witness someone discharge it, or someone has to be able, if someone says, hey, I saw them do it, then they actually have to go to court and testify, and maybe Mike can elaborate a little bit more, but I just remember them talking about it's difficult to actually even write a citation for someone doing it the way that it's written, is that you physically have, the police officer has to physically see them do it, or someone has to say, yes, I'll testify that they did it. And so you can elaborate a little bit more.
Well, and I just wanted to follow up. Didn't you say that the most calls you got were outside of the window of when they were legal?
Not necessarily, that's just the most common enforcement action we
Okay.
took was
Was
people
outside,
discharging
it
outside
wasn't,
the
the
window.
problem wasn't during
I
those
mean,
2 days.
we got complaints of during the fireworks calls of,
Uh-huh.
you know, they're freaking out my dog or something's going on that we really have no control over. But the enforcement takes place outside of that.
Outside of those 2 days.
Legal windows, because there's really nothing we can do inside of it. So.
And even that car fire was outside those days.
Right.
Yeah. No, and
And as far as transitioning from a state charge to a local charge, we'd have to look at that. My recollection of the law when it came out was there was verbiage in there to kind of limit the locals from being able to do that, actually. So that's something we'd have to go ahead and review. Now, obviously, if we make it a city thing, we start looking at civil charges, those kind of things, that might be an easier enforcement tool for us. But as far as just taking the state charges and flipping them to local, we'd have to review that because there is some verbiage in that law that kind of limits what the locals can do.
I think one thing that we could use moving forward into the next year is more information for the public, because I think there's a lot of misinformation about don't call the police, or they'll tell you they can't really do much, or the police will have to see it, or a witness could see it, or they could videotape. So people have all different beliefs of what they think they can do about somebody doing it on days they're not allowed to. And maybe if we could get the message concise on what can you do if your neighbor is doing off fireworks outside of when it is legal, and get that message out to the community, maybe that will help with enforcement.
That's one thing we've really tried to do is push the public education aspect of it. Council said that with every sales, you have to have this flyer that says what you can do in the city of Muscatine. Is that being done each and every time? No, it's not. I can tell you that for certain, because of the 4 underage sales we had, 2 of them didn't include the flyers. So that's one of my recommendations for next year, is to take a look at that and maybe do some compliance checks just for the flyers to make sure that information is getting out there.
And I'm talking about the people who don't want the fireworks around them, and they don't see that flyer because they don't go to the fireworks stands, but actually educating the people who are not appreciating the fireworks and what can they do as a remedy.
And again, I'd like to give Kevin Jennison, our communications manager, credit for this, because I think he's done a really good job the last couple of years of pushing this out. The flyer, pushing it out on social media. We've had it in the Journal. I think we've done a really good job of trying to hit every avenue of trying to explain it and let people know what they can and what they can't do to give them information about fireworks. So I really think Kevin's done a really good job.
Well, what I'm talking about, and maybe I missed it, but what can you do if your neighbor's doing it when they're not supposed to? You call the police. Can I take a picture of them doing it, and will that cause them to get a ticket? Can I videotape them, or does the police have to see it themselves? That's what I'm talking about, the information.
As with most crimes where you're gonna cite an individual, there has to be something that substantiates the charge.
Right.
So either somebody has to witness what's going on and be willing to come to court and testify, or an officer has to witness the violation personally and say, yep, I saw you do this, you're gonna get a citation for it. There are other codes out there. Iowa City has a popular code they use, I think they call it disorderly house, that you might consider. People throwing loud parties, throwing fireworks out the windows, whatever. You can take a look at those codes and maybe consider adopting something like that, where now you're just citing that homeowner for the action that's taking place on the property. We've never done that, but that's something certainly you could consider that would make it a little easier to address somebody sitting in the backyard throwing up fireworks, and we don't no longer have to go and identify who that individual is.
Sure.
It's a homeowner's responsibility. So,
Chief, on the existing fireworks that we have now, some of the complaints that I did get were in regards to the distance that they had to have from a home. In the flyer that we have currently right now, do we have any wording or verbiage that says, hey, you need to be at least 150 feet away from an existing home? I know that's something that I was kind of concerned about, because from a firefighter standpoint, that's probably one of the biggest things that we would potentially look at and saying, hey, how do we keep our community safe? How do we add more in the protection from your guys' perspective? Could we look at that, and maybe next year when we're doing this, we can add
that to the flyer
and have your recommendations? Obviously, I'm not going to say 500 feet away from anything, or else you're going to probably get to the point where you're never going to have anything. But I think a safe
good
distance,
recommendation.
I think that would be something that you could look at.
1,000 foot.
And well, yeah, then you get to the point where you're like, oh, well,
Santo's recommendation is
no. I want you to kind of look at that and kind of have some discussions amongst your team, and then kind of come back with us and give us some verbiage that can help us improve the system for next year.
Okay. I have a question too. Is there any way we can limit the number of permits that are given?
As far as sales is, that is a total state thing. We have no local control over sales.
Even though we're a
Yes.
home?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I've got one more question. This goes back to Chief Fevers' comment about limiting the number of calls. So if you're saying that you think if we ban it outright, that it will limit the number of calls.
Yes.
Out of the days that it was not legal to set fireworks off this year, how many citations were given to people for illegal use?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have that answer for you. The citations are done through the police department, so I would look at it this way. I would look at it, this is the second summer that we've had discharging of fireworks. And if you think of, kind of go back a little bit and think of the noise and the bangs and the haze across the community, prior to 2 years ago, we didn't have that. Now, were there fireworks? Did we have some grass fires? Did we have calls? Yes, and we still would, but not to the extent that we've had the last 2 years, or not the complaints that we've had in the last 2 years. So I'm not saying if you agreed to ban the discharge of fireworks moving forward, you know, like Cedar Rapids and Waterloo and West Des Moines did, that it's gonna eliminate everything. But it is gonna reduce it and make it better and get kind of back to what it was before. Yes, some people are still gonna do it. We'll deal with it. Police department will deal with it, but not to the scale that we have in the last 2
They
years.
weren't for sale before there. They're still gonna be for
Yeah.
sale here and with no,
Right, and I guess I still
They
had
go out in the
I still had
county.
another comment to go along with this, which is that I don't feel, as much as I hate the fireworks personally, I don't feel a need to punish those people who choose to do it legally on the days that are allowed, when the people that are doing it illegal are gonna do it anyway, because we can't stop the sale of it. You know, you can just go 2 minutes across town and buy mortar shells that'll rock the windows in every house in town, regardless of the legality of discharge. And so I don't think we should restrict those people who legally choose to do the fireworks on just the 3rd and the 4th, as we have it right now. I certainly don't want to extend the days, but as long as we have zero control over the sale, then I feel that we need to offer at least a couple of days for discharge, or else we're only punishing the people that follow the rules. So, because the most issue that I had with the fireworks this whole year was every day except for the 3rd and the 4th.
does anybody else have anything?
I guess a question for Greg. On the idea of having some of the fines being civil Muscatine ordinance fines, is that something that we ought to have Matt look into, whether that's legal, possible, or whatever?
Under, Andrew had pointed out 1586 violations, any violation that constitutes the simple misdemeanor pursuant to Iowa Code section so on and so forth, should be charged as a simple misdemeanor. Any other violation of this chapter shall be considered a simple misdemeanor or a municipal infraction under Title I. So I don't know that it's really clear what's a municipal fraction, what's a misdemeanor, and whether or not we can do something that's broader than state code. So I think we should probably take a closer look at 1586A and also have a chat with Matt.
I would agree with that.
Because I wouldn't mind upping the penalty for not following the rules.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would like to, at least at budget time, if not before, take a look at how much revenue was brought in from all of the sales tents and keep being mindful of that. Perhaps use some of that money to put back into additional staff to try to take off some of the pressure during that time.
We won't have a breakdown of that sales tax. That all comes through the state, and I don't know that they provide that on a per user basis.
You can kind of do the math.
We should be able to get an estimate at least.
You can kind of you can probably figure it out for Hy-Vee since they give the 10%
Right.
donation to MCSA, so you can kind of figure it for that location, but I don't think you could really get an accurate figure for the other ones.
Well, but all of them have sales tax permits that they had to get. You have to file your sales tax permit information quarterly. The state, we can't get it, but I would think the state could pull that information. But these individuals running the tents probably have them in 15 different cities, and they're all working under that same sales tax permit.
Most of those are out-of-state folks, too.
Yeah, that is a good point. We had 2 tents that had the same supplier, if you want to think of it that way, out of Nebraska. We had a tent out of Ohio. It was supplied out of Ohio, just all over the place. And you're right. There are very few that are just local folks that say, hey, I'm going to get some fireworks and sell. It's usually these big companies that provide stock to tens or hundreds of tents throughout the state. And, you know, they pull theirs off. But as far as individual people, yeah, it just doesn't happen.
Okay.
Thank you
Maybe
very
the city
much.
should get a 10.
Thank you.
We appreciate it, and thanks for putting together all that paperwork.
Yeah, it was informative.
Hearing nothing else tonight, Councilman Harvey, do you have anything?
Yes, Your Honor. As you all may remember, I voiced my displeasure with the city logo that was proposed that we adopt. And I still have that same opinion, and I have received received no positive input from any of the citizens. I have received several negative comments about the city logo, and unfortunately, you know, we spent several years and several tens of thousands of dollars for this company to study Muscatine and make recommendations, and I think this is a poor result of that time and effort, because the first time I saw that logo at the chamber, I thought to myself, what the hell is that? You know, it does nothing to make you think of Muscatine. It's green and blue shades with a couple of swirly lines on it, and that's all it is. I think it's a poor example of what can be done for a city logo, and I would be really opposed for the city to start using that logo on any of our official business. I know there's other entities involved, and I would think that those entities would not adopt that logo unless their governing boards approved them to use it. And I think that the council being the city's governing board, I think we have, should have the opportunity to voice whether we want the city to use that logo or not. Personally, I think there's enough graphic designers in the city of Muscatine, we could put out a request for some local talent to propose city logos, and I bet every one of them would be infinitely better than what was presented to the council. So Greg, during this part of the meeting, can council members make a motion?
No.
No. Can we ask for a consensus?
You could ask for it to be put on the next agenda.
If you don't mind, rather than putting it on the next agenda, I would suggest an in-depth discussion, and one in which you could invite the other stakeholders to have a more comprehensive meeting.
I don't care about the other stakeholders. I'm only concerned about Muscatine.
Well, but
I don't care if Muscatine Power and Water does it. I don't care if the hospital does it. I want the city of Muscatine not to use that logo.
I understand, but it was a stakeholder, seven entities involved in the process. I would just simply suggest that you involve everybody in the discussion, or in that form or another form, before you take some type of action. That's all.
Well, what they do, like I say, I don't care.
Understood?
And we don't have an in-depth in August.
No.
September would be your next.
September would
I mean,
be the first.
there's no rush.
Depends upon how soon, if you're,
It's already being used.
well, we ought to stop it then until the council can make a decision. Do we want to use it or do we not want to use it? I think we perfectly have that right to do so. And I would hate to see us start using it and then have the argument come back on us. Well, you're going to use it, so why would you want to stop it now? I don't think that's fair to the council.
I would agree with that, you know, to hold off on using it moving forward until we get the in-depth session where we can discuss with the other stakeholders some potential options.
And whatever discussion we have, whether it's next meeting or the September in-depth, I'd like that to be able, after that discussion, be able to have an action item for the council to, if they so choose to make a decision, yes or no.
Could have a call a special meeting if you wanted to get it done sooner, but.
Councilman Salcedo?
So, I hear the differences in opinions that you're saying, Alan, but I also want to remind you that whatever we choose, even if we were to choose this one, or we had a graphic designer come up with something that you liked, we're probably going to have a majority of the citizens also say, well, I don't like that either. And any change that we have, we're never going to have 100% acceptance. So if we were to pursue something, for example, in this, you know, new logo, if a year, 2 years down the road from now, it is completely a flop, what stops us from changing then? How do we know if this new logo ends up being a huge success and 2 or 5 years from now, we're like, well, I'm sure glad we never pulled that one. Any change we have is never going to be accepted widely. It is what the majority of what the people that we had invested trying to do this 2 years ago came back with feedback and said, this is the best that we have. So I don't have it, I'm not, and I understand your opinion, that's fine. This is the council's representation of the community. So we had a joint effort in that effort, and I'm just explaining to you my opinion that regardless of what you choose, you go back and we get graphic designers, you're gonna have somebody come back and say, well, that's the ugliest logo I had. And then you're gonna come back and say, well, what if I liked it? So you're gonna have a challenge, and if 2 years from now, 5 years from now, we say, hey, we don't like it, let's change. You're right, the community has changed. We don't do the clams anymore. We probably have something different. What if we have a different business change and the majority of our business is different then? We don't have that, we don't know that. That's the future that we have.
Okay, but if you adopt it now, who in 5 years is gonna say it's been a flop? If we don't say it's a flop now, who in 5 years is gonna say it's a flop?
Well, obviously,
because we're not going to have the metrics to.
The reason of the branding is to look at that.
I'm gonna interrupt as a point of order. Are we having a discussion right now?
No,
Yeah,
go ahead.
no.
I just brought my point.
Okay.
It's Alan's got the floor.
I'd say I don't know how we go about this, but I'd say let's have this official discussion at some future meeting.
If the September in-depth works, then I'll work to invite the stakeholders, if that works.
That works for me.
Or if it needs to be sooner.
Or a different date.
Like, we can actually have a special date set aside. I understand Alan's point of view because, like I said, I think in the past 48 hours, I've had more people give me their opinion about this. And all the way up to 6:30 this evening, I had people on my phone. So
let's have that meeting.
Yeah. Let's have it sooner than later.
I'll work to have it at in-depth or a meeting that we can try and get as many of the stakeholders as possible.
And since we haven't changed any of the documents or anything like that with the new logo, is it a problem to hold off on beginning the use until that meeting?
No, it's mainly just on social media.
Okay.
Yeah. I just wouldn't want to see dollars spent on things with that logo yet.
We haven't spent any dollars on it, it's only on social media.
So it'd be easy to just wait?
Yep, we were
Okay.
just starting to get, what do you call them?
I do have one other
Did you
question.
have something else?
Yeah, mainly probably for Dave. What can you say about the paperwork status of Fifth and Mulberry? Has that gone through? And obviously, there's the second issue is with the Jane House. Is there anything the city can do with the consistent?
Not be public related to those two.
Can you speak about it in open session, Dave?
Consistent? What?
Complaints about the Jane House. I mean, do we have to monthly?
We gotta cut the
Mr.
grass.
Sanitation or,
we submit
cut the
the
grass
bills. Primarily, that's been the biggest complaint at the Jane House has been, we've sealed it up. We have done all that. So we did that a couple of months ago.
We or he?
We did.
You did, okay.
We
Or
did
the
it.
city did.
And then but there's still been a problem from nuisance abatement with respect to grass not being cut, or, you know, hay fields not being cut there as far as their lawn. So we have had to do that as well, had to get that done. However, it seems though that when we do notify the owner of the property, he does mow that, so there's not a lot of bills per se on that issue. But we did seal the building up, because he wasn't sealing in the areas that I think Councilor Fitzgerald brought up, what I remember anyway, about some of the holes from windows not being in above, and we decided to make sure that we got those sealed as well. As far as 500 Mulberry goes, unless you had any other questions on Jane House. As far as Mulberry Street goes, I mean, we took title, and now we're in the process of getting proposals in for the asbestos assessment of that building. And once we have that special assessment, then the state's going to pick that up, the cost of that inspection. The second half of that is if they find something, then we'll have to abate the asbestos, and the state will help us up to $25,000. For every dollar we spend, they'll spend a dollar up to $25,000. And we've done this before when we did the T-Straight building, and they will help fund some of that. But be prepared that just in case, we may be heading, there's a chance that there's much, that if in fact there is asbestos in there, and it is a major problem, it could contaminate brick and a bunch of things in there, which means now we're talking demolition and disposing of the entire building. And we'll probably bring it over to our landfill. That's warning, heads up view. That we may have to create a spot. There's a way to manage an area within the landfill so that you're documenting where that's being placed, and it's got to be bagged, and there's a bunch of things, and that's going to bag bricks. Right. So that may be a complete problem, and I don't think the state would assist us with that particular angle. If we don't just abate it, we have to dispose of it.
As far as the abatement is concerned, are you happy with the way that's timeline is progressing, or is it kind of stalling out?
No, I went off on vacation for 2 weeks, and then in catching up the last 2 weeks has put me behind on getting a sales agreement in place, also with the next person that's going to take over the building once we're done with the abatement process.
Fortunately or unfortunately, that building is right out there for everybody to see.
Oh, I know, it's a sore,
It doesn't hide.
Sight sore.
The sale can't take place until after the abatement
Right.
is done, because the state funds are through the city and not through the private property owner. So, however, Parks and Rec did go out and appreciate that and knock down all those weeds, et cetera, so.
Yeah, and they helped us out, and I would say thank you, but he left.
He left.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
Any other questions on
Well, I just want to be
properties?
sure that things aren't stalled out is all.
Anything else, Councilman Harvey?
That's it.
Councilman Malcolm?
Nothing that we haven't already discussed, Your Honor. Thank you.
Councilwoman Brackert?
Nothing this evening, Your Honor.
Councilman Fitzgerald?
Nothing at this time, Your Honor.
Councilman Salcedo?
Just a big thank you to the Parks and Rec in regards to the college search soccer term, kickoff that they had. I think that was a great pickup for the team as far as our staff, and good job through a lot of the community, and a big hit for our community as far as businesses that were affected and hotels, and so it was a big plus, and thank you for staff and all the work on that. That's all I have.
Councilman Brackett?
Just a couple of requests for the traffic committee. Can we look at the line of sight of the restricted site area coming out of the Clark House onto the side street there?
Lynn?
Chestnut.
Chestnut. I had some complaints on that, and from people exiting that alley and almost getting hit by, cars going down Chestnut. Yeah, well, as they're coming out of the, maybe it's not Chestnut, maybe it's, what's the one on, is that the one on the north side of the Clark House?
No, that's on the west.
Or, sorry, west, up the hill, the top, up the hill, what is that?
Is it Pine?
That's
Yeah,
Chestnut.
that's
Okay,
Chestnut.
well, that's the one, yeah, so that's the one that I'm referring to. So, coming out of there, and I drove past and took a look, and yeah, if you're coming out of that alley onto the street, you're not gonna, with the trucks parked there, it'd be really difficult to see. So just want to refer that to traffic committee. And then another suggestion that had been made that I liked quite a bit when I heard it was, to put one of the, devices that shows how fast you're going on 61, where the speed changes to 45, right before the cameras, because the cameras only slow people down that know about them. I mean, if they don't see the sign, they're not slowing down. We had, there was somebody that got killed there not that long ago, just past that intersection, heading towards the Walmart or over by the Walmart, people going through there. I see near accidents on a regular basis at that intersection because it's a blind spot if you're turning left from town across. And the way that light functions, you might have a green, but not a solid green arrow. So you can turn, but you got to look out for oncoming traffic. And if they're still going 60 miles an hour when they hit that point,
Are you talking about the portable trailer that we have?
or a permanent one.
So that would require DOT approval for both, to take a look at.
Okay, I'd like to see what it would take to get that done. I'm not asking to do it, obviously, but what would it take to get it done so that we could maybe look at it in the near future as a potential option at some point? Because I think that would improve safety in that area more than the cameras do, honestly. And I also think that it would help with that's the blind hill. When you're sitting there trying to take a left, if you're heading out of town essentially on 61, if you're kind of trying to turn to like Unity Point there, or what's the fast food place there?
Oh, Culver's.
The only problem is that we found on University and Highway and on 22, those speed signs don't last long. They're expensive and they're expensive to repair. So the trailer may be a better option to put out there on occasion. But
Okay.
we have found that those don't work. That's why we had talked about at budget time switching to those
Right.
yield LED signs at those locations,
Oh,
if you
sure.
recall. And then we also have, or the Colorado option, where we have the push button and the
One of the other things that I had heard brought up that I thought was also a potential good idea would be to have a countdown box for the yellow light, because knowing that it's at 1 and it's going to change to red, that's not my preferred option, but that was another suggestion that I heard just in having discussions about that intersection in general. I still would like to know options for the speed display as you're coming into town. I don't care about going out of town. You know what your speed limit is right there because you're speeding up, not decelerating. But it's the people coming into town who may not be local, who may be flying over that hill because they're going 65 as they were going down 61, and they didn't notice the 55, didn't notice the 45 because they're playing with their phone. And then they come into town and plow someone through at that intersection where it's half blind. So
Didn't we have one like that by by Muscatine Power and Water for quite a while?
I think there's still one over there.
It's still there.
Is it still there? Yeah.
So it's something like that would be like, I want to know what it would take to get it done.
Yep.
Thank you.
There are about 10 or 11 signs, actually, and 4 of them have 2 orange flags on them each. So just as a reminder to folks, it's not undersigned by any means.
Yeah, but if you're speeding, you can't see them.
Slow down.
Did you have anything else?
But yes, we'll take a look at it.
No, that's all I've got tonight. Thank you.
Staff?
I just wanted to reiterate the comments made about the Park and Rec Department and the College Church Kickoff. They've hosted that for a number of years, but we haven't owned that event before they got that done in 2 to 3 months or so. Ran a wonderful event. We had a perfect 4 days of weather and events. I expect it to be bigger, better, and when you have a year to prepare for it. Next year, My understanding is it came in out in the black as we expected, and we'll be able to put more resources into that next year, and also work with a number of volunteers in the communities. But again, yeah, there was a number of folks downtown asking where to eat, shop in Muscatine, and had a lot of wonderful comments about the facilities in downtown Muscatine.
I just had a couple quick things. Reminder, there's no council meeting next week. Or yes, none next week. There's no in-depth in August. And our guests for our city on Tuesday night this week are Kim Warren with AIM, and she's going to be going over the new data that came out on the Alice report. And then Judy Yates from MCSA will be joining us. So everyone have a good couple of weeks, and we'll see you back here 2 weeks from tonight. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned.